He escaped poverty and took over the internet. How does a world champion kickboxer, raised in the relative obscurity of a working-class English town, become the most Googled man on the entire planet? How do you meticulously build a digital empire founded on the promise of escaping a so-called matrix, only to find yourself ensnared in a very real one, constructed of laws, accusations, and iron bars? This is a story woven from the most glaring contradictions imaginable. It's the glint of a vast fleet of Bugattis gleaming under the Romanian sun, set against the cold, hard steel of a pair of handcuffs. It's the aroma of expensive cigars and the pop of champagne bottles inside a sprawling mansion, contrasted with the stark, echoing reality of a concrete jail cell. This is the story of Andrew Tate, and to understand it is to understand more than just a timeline of a controversial life. It's a deep dive into the shadowy underbelly of internet fame, an exploration of the intoxicating seduction of absolute power, and a case study in the deeply troubling influence one man can hold over millions of impressionable young men across the entire globe. This isn't just about one man's rise and potential fall. This is the story of how Andrew Tate architected a multi-million-dollar empire built on a potent cocktail of wealth, power, and masculine rage, and the storm of toxic controversy that has followed his every move. The blueprint of a fighter. Long before the deafening roar of internet fame and the glare of global notoriety, there was Emery Andrew Tate III, a young man whose identity was forged in the crucible of poverty and the relentless pursuit of discipline. He was born in Washington, D.C., but his formative years were spent in Luton, England, following his parents' divorce. This relocation cast him in a world that was a universe away from the opulent, high-octane spectacle he would one day meticulously broadcast to his millions of followers online. Luton, a tough, gritty, post-industrial town still bearing the scars of economic decline, provided the harsh backdrop for a boy who confessed he always felt like an outsider, the American kid with an American accent in a fiercely British town. The central, unshakable pillar of his life was his father, Emery Tate Jr., a figure as charismatic and brilliant as he was complicated. The elder Tate was no ordinary man. He was an international master of chess, a dazzling strategist who viewed life as a grand chessboard and lived his own through a series of calculated risks. But more than that, he was a philosopher who preached a doctrine of absolute, uncompromising self-reliance and a traditional, almost militant vision of masculinity. Andrew and his brother Tristan weren't just raised by their father, they were systematically molded by his worldview. His lessons were brutally simple and endlessly repeated. The world is a relentless fight, and to win, you must be smarter, stronger, and more ruthless than every single person standing in your way. This paternal influence wasn't just a part of his upbringing, it would become the very blueprint, the foundational code for the top G persona he would later perfect. It was a philosophy that treated weakness not as a human trait, but as a cardinal sin, and vulnerability not as a potential for connection, but as a fatal, unforgivable flaw. That punishing mindset found its perfect, violent expression in the world of professional kickboxing. For Andrew, the ring wasn't merely a sport, it was his father's teachings made flesh and bone. It was an arena of brutal clarity, with obvious winners and vanquished losers, where success was measured in the visceral finality of knockouts and the gleam of championship belts. And he excelled. He wasn't just good at it, he was exceptionally good. His journey culminated in him becoming a multi-time world champion, each victory serving as tangible proof of his discipline, his controlled aggression, and his relentless, all-consuming drive. The ring taught him more than just how to fight. It taught him how to sell a fight, how to construct a larger-than-life persona, and how to psychologically dominate an opponent long before the first bell even rang. It gave him his first intoxicating taste of fame, and more critically, it provided him with a powerful narrative. He was the warrior who had single-handedly pulled himself up from nothing, the champion who had conquered his bleak circumstances by sheer force of will. He wasn't just winning fights, he was meticulously writing the first chapter of his own myth, the myth of a man who could escape the matrix, from the ring to the web. While Andrew Tate was busy collecting kickboxing titles and building his physical legend, The world outside the ring was undergoing a seismic shift. The internet was rapidly evolving from a novelty into the central arena of modern life, a new digital frontier where unimaginable fortunes could be amassed and global influence could be built on a scale previously thought impossible. For a man with Tate's ferocious ambition and ego, the magnetic pull of this new world was impossible to resist. The prize money in kickboxing was finite, a ceiling he could see, but the internet's potential for wealth and power seemed truly endless. It was a bigger, more complex ring with a global audience of billions, and he was more than ready to step inside and start swinging. His first significant venture into this digital world had nothing to do with the self-help and motivational speeches that he'd later become infamous for. Instead, in a move that foreshadowed his future business acumen, he and his brother Tristan launched a webcam business. They employed a team of women to engage in online chats with men, selling them stories and companionship. The business was undeniably lucrative, quickly generating substantial income. But it was also his first real taste of the controversy that would come to define his entire public career. The venture taught him crucial, foundational lessons about the mechanics of the internet. How to master digital marketing, how to identify a deep-seated human demand and exploit it for profit, and above all, the immense power of selling a carefully constructed fantasy. But his public profile truly detonated in 2016 when he was cast on the UK's popular reality TV show, Big Brother. This was his calculated shot at mainstream recognition, a bridge from the niche world of combat sports to primetime television. His time on the show was short-lived, however, ending abruptly in scandal. A video filmed before his appearance on the show surfaced in the media. It appeared to show him striking a woman with a belt. Tate, and the woman in the video, vehemently insisted the interaction was consensual, private, and entirely playful. But in the court of public opinion, the context mattered little. The damage was done. The network swiftly removed him from the show. This moment of public disgrace became a pivotal, strategic turning point. A different personality might have retreated, apologized, or disappeared. Tate did the opposite. He leaned in, hard. He took to the internet not with contrition, but with pure, unadulterated aggression. He didn't just deny wrongdoing. He framed his removal as a deliberate conspiracy, a calculated move by the establishment to silence a powerful man who refused to conform to their weak modern standards. He had discovered a profound lesson about the digital age. Controversy breeds clicks. Outrage fuels engagement. In the burgeoning attention economy, being hated was just as valuable as being loved. And in many ways, it was far more potent. He was no longer just Andrew Tate, the fighter. He was Andrew Tate, the provocateur. He had found a new, more formidable opponent, the faceless, insidious entity he would soon begin calling the Matrix. And he was learning that the most effective way to fight it wasn't in a ring with gloves, but online with a keyboard, where he alone could control the narrative and build a global army of followers. Building the empire. With his name now irrevocably linked to controversy, Andrew Tate made a calculated decision to monetize his newfound infamy. He observed his growing online audience and recognized that they weren't just watching him for entertainment, they were looking to him for answers. He had successfully tapped into a deep, pervasive anxiety coursing through a generation of young men. A palpable sense of being lost and adrift in a rapidly changing world, perpetually worried about financial insecurity and deeply confused about the role of modern masculinity. His solution was a simple, brilliantly packaged, and tantalizingly direct product, a comprehensive guide to becoming him. The product was called Hustlers University. Hustlers University, which was later rebranded as The Real World, was a masterclass in digital marketing and aspirational branding. For a recurring monthly fee, Tate promised to teach his followers the secrets to getting rich, physically powerful, and socially dominant. In his own words, how to escape the matrix. The online platform was a slickly produced ecosystem offering dozens of courses on so-called modern wealth creation tactics, ranging from cryptocurrency trading and e-commerce to freelance copywriting and stock analysis. It was marketed not just as a school, but as an exclusive, members-only club for aspiring alphas. a digital brotherhood united in their quest for power. But the true genius behind the platform's explosive, viral growth was its aggressive and highly effective affiliate marketing structure. Subscribers weren't just passive students. They were incentivized to become active soldiers in a digital army. Every member was given a unique referral link and earned a substantial commission for each new person they successfully recruited. This created a powerful, self-perpetuating system that flooded every corner of social media with clips of Andrew Tate. His own followers, all competing for commissions, did the laborious work of evangelizing for him. They clipped, edited, and pushed his most shocking, provocative, misogynistic, and aspirational sound bites onto TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels. The platform algorithms, designed to promote engaging content, did the rest. Soon it became impossible to scroll without seeing his face. Whether you loved him or despised him, you simply couldn't escape him. The results of this strategy were nothing short of stunning. By mid-2022, Andrew Tate had become one of the most Googled individuals on the planet, his search traffic eclipsing that of presidents and movie stars. His online courses were reportedly generating millions of dollars every single month, with a subscriber base climbing into the hundreds of thousands. He had transcended the label of influencer to become the de facto leader of a global, cult-like movement. His content was a meticulously crafted fantasy, a constant stream of private jets, roaring supercars, and opulent mansions, all presented as the inevitable reward for adhering to his teachings. He was selling a dream of ultimate freedom and power, and business was booming. Even as serious legal troubles began to mount on the horizon, the digital empire he had so shrewdly built just kept growing, fueled by an army of his own making. To his followers, he was living, breathing proof. He was the man who had hacked the system and was now, for a small monthly fee, selling the cheat codes. The Gospel of Tate, the foundation of Andrew Tate's sprawling empire, wasn't just the promise of wealth. It was built upon a rigid, deeply controversial, and profoundly toxic ideology. This Gospel of Tate was a potent brew of anti-establishment rage, extreme self-reliance inherited from his father, and a brand of hypermasculinity so exaggerated it often felt like a caricature. It offered seductively simple black and white answers to the messy, complicated problems of the modern world, and it struck a powerful chord with a demographic of young men who felt alienated, voiceless, and left behind. At the very core of his public message was a worldview constructed upon the subjugation and control of women. While he has at times attempted to deny being a misogynist, his vast library of public statements speaks for itself, leaving little room for interpretation. In countless videos, podcasts, and interviews, he has explicitly argued that women are inherently inferior to men, that they should be subservient within a relationship, and that they are, in effect, the property of their male partners. He went so far as to suggest that victims of sexual assault must bear some of the responsibility for their attacks. These were not occasional, unfortunate slips of the tongue. They were the core, foundational tenets of his philosophy, repeated relentlessly to his massive global audience. This incendiary rhetoric had a real, measurable, and chilling impact, especially on impressionable young men and boys. Educators across the United States, the UK, and Australia began reporting on the Andrew Tate effect manifesting in their classrooms. They described a noticeable and troubling rise in aggressively sexist comments, a dismissive attitude towards female authority, and an increase in hostile behavior towards female students and teachers. For a generation of boys navigating the confusing terrain of identity, Tate's message offered a seductive, if dangerously backward, sense of clarity. It told them that their feelings of alienation and frustration weren't their fault. It was the fault of a weak and broken society that had been corrupted by the poison of feminism. He promised them a glorious return to a so-called natural order, a world where men were unequivocally in charge. When major social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok finally banned him for violating their policies on hate speech, the action paradoxically amplified his message. His content didn't disappear. It metastasized, clipped, and endlessly re-uploaded by thousands of loyal fan accounts. To his followers, his banishment served as the ultimate confirmation of his central narrative. He was a courageous truth-teller, being silenced by the very matrix he was trying to expose. And when he was later reinstated on Twitter, now X, by its new ownership, his reach and his perceived legitimacy only grew, as he framed it as a victory over the forces of censorship. This ideology ignited a massive societal and cultural backlash. Parents, educators, journalists, and experts on online radicalization issued stark warnings that he was actively normalizing misogyny on an industrial scale and creating a dangerous gateway to more extreme, far-right ideologies. They argued that Andrew Tate wasn't just a harmless entertainer, but a genuinely dangerous figure, single-handedly working to undermine decades of progress on gender equality. But for his devoted followers, every critical article and every televised denouncement was just more proof that he was right all along. The system was clearly terrified of the truth he was speaking. The system strikes back? For years, Andrew Tate's battles had been waged with words and pixels, fought on the digital battlefields of social media. But in the early morning hours of December 29, 2022, his abstract war with the Matrix became terrifyingly and physically real. In a high-profile, widely televised raid on his fortified compound in Bucharest, Romania, Andrew and his brother Tristan were arrested by armed authorities. The charges leveled against them were as serious as they get: human trafficking, rape, and forming an organized crime group to sexually exploit women. The internet's biggest and most successful provocateur was now in handcuffs, facing the full, terrifying power of a national legal system. The arrest and the convoluted legal battle that followed became an immediate global spectacle, dissected online by millions. From the very moment of his arrest, Tate and his formidable legal and PR team have fiercely denied all allegations. They have consistently and powerfully argued that the entire case is a baseless political hit job, a deep state conspiracy, or Matrix attack designed to silence him and destroy his reputation. That narrative resonated perfectly with his legions of followers. For them, his arrest wasn't a moment of potential justice for his alleged victims. It was the ultimate proof that the Matrix was real and that Andrew Tate was its #1 public enemy. His legal troubles didn't sink his brand, they supercharged it. In the eyes of his supporters, he was instantly transformed into a martyr for their cause. The legal fight has been long, complex, and messy. After spending months in pretrial detention in a Romanian jail, the brothers were moved to house arrest. They were later released from house arrest, but were initially banned from leaving Romania as the investigation continued. That travel ban has since been lifted and then reimposed as the case continues to be mired in procedural delays and challenges. While Tate's team has publicly celebrated these delays as significant victories, in proof of a weak case, the grave charges against them have not been dropped, and the prospect of a full trial still looms large. And his legal problems are not confined to Romania. Authorities in the United Kingdom have also issued arrest warrants for separate allegations of sexual aggression dating back to a period between 2012 and 2015. His potential extradition to the UK to face those charges will only be considered after the legal process in Romania is concluded. On top of these criminal investigations, he is also facing major civil lawsuits in both the UK and the US, filed by women accusing him of sexual violence and coercive control. Despite this multi-front legal assault, Tate remains entirely defiant. He uses his massive platform on X, where he still commands an audience of millions, to relentlessly declare his innocence, attack the character of his accusers, and reinforce his narrative as a victim of a global conspiracy. All the while, his primary business, the real world, continues to operate and enroll new members. His influence, though altered by his circumstances, remains undeniably powerful. Whether he is ultimately found guilty or innocent is a matter for a court of law to decide. But in the digital world he conquered, the verdict from his followers was delivered a long time ago. If you found this deep dive into Andrew Tate's rise and the controversies surrounding him fascinating, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We break down the biggest stories and most influential figures shaping our culture every single week. Share this video with someone to get a conversation started, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. What does the Andrew Tate phenomenon truly reveal about the anxieties and divisions in our society today? The story of Andrew Tate is one that could only have happened in the unique cultural and technological landscape of the 21st century. It is the story of a man who masterfully used the tools of the modern internet to construct a persona and build a commercial empire that is, at once, wildly successful and deeply corrosive. Through a combination of raw discipline, relentless provocation, and a brilliant, intuitive grasp of internet culture, he clawed his way out of the obscurity of Luton to become a household name and a global figure. He identified a deep-seated anxiety and a crisis of identity in a generation of young men and sold them a powerful, immensely profitable, and dangerously simple story of escape and domination. His influence is now undeniable, but so is the toxic damage left in his wake. The misogyny he preaches isn't just talk. It has been directly linked to real-world behavioral shifts in schools and has contributed to making the internet an even more hostile and polarized place for women. He has become a living symbol of some of our deepest and most painful cultural divides, over gender, over power, and over the very definition of what it means to be a man in the modern world. As his complex legal battles in Romania and the UK continue to unfold, the final chapter of his personal story remains unwritten. He could face a conviction and a long prison sentence, or he could ultimately be cleared of all charges. But in many ways, the specific legal outcome almost doesn't matter as much as the profound cultural impact he has already made. The empire he built now exists far beyond him, living on in millions of video clips, shared memes, and in an ideology that has taken firm root in the minds of his countless followers. The meteoric rise of Andrew Tate holds a mirror up to all of us. It reflects the immense power of algorithms to create and reinforce echo chambers. It exposes a desperate search for guidance and meaning among young men, and it demonstrates just how difficult it is to combat bad ideas once they go viral. So whether you view him as a con man or a guru, a criminal or a martyr, his story forces us to confront a much tougher question. Why was there a market for a man like Andrew Tate in the first place? And what can we, as a society, do to fill the profound void that he so effectively and ruthlessly exploited?